Good evening, everybody, and welcome to day 5 of Intro to Coding Live. Today we're going to be covering Python loops and data. One of the reasons why loops are so important is we've gone through accessing different elements of like string indexing or list indexing, tuple indexing, and that's great if we're just looking for one item. But if we're trying to check that list for check these data structures for things, sometimes we need to loop through them a few times. So it's it's a block of code that you start a series of steps that you loop through and um, continue going until you get to whatever task that you're aiming for is complete. So we've utilized some of the if statements and we've utilized a lot of if statements when we were trying to do some simple things. And with utilizing loops, we can kind of crunch some of those if statement blocks down. And when we only need one if statement and just checking different elements inside our particular collection, you'll see that this is going to be a lot more efficient. So what we have here is we have the basic syntax for our for loop. Now, a for loop is going to iterate through each element. So the for item in collection, it's basically a template that we're looking at. And we see our colon here, and then we're going to end up doing something, whether it's a function that we've built, if it's a short series of if statements, or whatever our logic that we're trying to accomplish here. And just like this says here, this is the purpose of a loop is to execute the same block of code repeatedly. So this example is for I in X. What the I stands for is the index. Now we remember when we were looking at lists, each one of our elements we referred to as an index. In this particular block here, our nums is assigned to this list of 5 numbers or 5 elements. So what we're going to do is we're going to iterate through this print statement for once for every single one of these. And as I run this, you'll see our print takes our X, which is our index, which starts at 0, but it's going to refer to our first element, which is 1. So 1 times 2 is 2. And then we repeat the loop. 2 times 2 is 4. 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 2 is 8. 5 times 2 is 10. Now this will run until we run out of elements. We won't get any errors. We'll just move on to whatever's next in our processing. In this case, we don't have anything. Any questions there? All right, so now we'll step into a little more involved example. So again, we're defining our nums list with with the numbers 1 through 5. We're creating an empty list called mult nums, and we're looping through. Again, X is our index variable, and we're looping through this first list nums. So now here we create another variable, and just like we went through to double every element of our list, we're doing that here. And now if we remember the append element, append was the list element, and does anybody remember what that does?
It adds it to the end.
Yes. So what we'll do, thank you very much. What we'll do is we'll take our mult and our mult variable, which is double whatever our element is, and just like we said, we'll add it to the end. I apologize, my window that shows who's talking is not functioning properly right now. So at the result, we're going to print our original num list, and then we're going to print our result list. And if I run this, you'll see both of the outputs as we expected. Instead of printing one number per line like we did with the individual print statement, we added it to the list and output it all at once. Any questions there? All right. So our next list, our next demonstration here. I'm going to try to pull this over here so we can see the entire thing. So we're going to iterate through sequence, and we're going to do a membership check, and then we're going to perform our action, which is these print statements based on of our membership check. Now, if we remember right, the membership check is coming from this in operator. We have our in operators here, and pay attention and note that we also have two OR operators. So we take our URLs list, which is a list of URLs as it sees, and we're going to iterate through each element. Now, it's good practice to try to give yourself a variable that makes sense to you when you're creating these. So in the previous examples, we were using X. Because each one of these is a URL, it just makes sense to name it URL. Just make sure you're not using the same exact name as the variable that you're trying to iterate through. As it's just like the rest of you'll get a syntax error it will cause an error if I end up trying to use the same variable, I believe. Yes. So if I try to use the same variable, one, we can't use the one case. Well, oh, I apologize. The URLs are here. This is just, in effect, it's bad practice. Um, Keep yourself like for an element, the best practice is probably giving it a singular name, like the URL for the list of URLs. And as I run through this, we're going to go through our first URL, which is Nike.com, and we're doing our checks here. Remember, if with an or statement, the left or the right has to be true for us to execute this. Nike is not an Apple or Dell, or Apple or Dell are not in Nike.com. So we step to the next piece. Here we're checking for Reddit or Facebook. Neither one of those are in Nike.com. So our default case or our else statement is the other side. And it just repeats the same logic down through. And this works a lot better than trying to go through and rewrite this if statement every time for every single element. And the other case is we don't always know how many elements are in our collection that we're supplying, and this will still go through our collection even if we add another one like so as we add Code Platoon's website in here and we run it, and now we just have an additional line. Any questions there? And this is pretty good example on how we can combine what we were learning about our flow control statements, if, elif, and else, inside our looping structure to be able to start building out some logic that really starts doing things for us. So we can loop through any kind of collection or an iterable by using this for loop. Now, this is an interesting question right here, where if we want to just loop through something 5 times, at first this might make sense for I in 5, but 5 is that's a literal integer, so it doesn't actually translate into a collection for Python. So instead, we need to use this syntax here, where we have for I, and remember we're calling our index and we call this range function. And similar to our splicing and other similar things we've covered over the past few lessons and everything, we have a start, a stop, and a step we want to use. So if we wanted to go by 2, you'd set the step by 2, etc. Now, the start is optional, and when we don't supply the start, then we default to 0. Our stop, in this particular case, that's the 5 that we're looking for. That's the only mandatory piece of this range is the stop. We need to know how many elements we want to go through. And then as we were discussing, we've covered the concept of step before. So this is pretty much review. And this is another optional piece. And we can move into the demonstration of this. So we're going for our index and we're going to the range of 20, which when we run that, we see 0 through 19. So you may have expected it to go all the way through 20, but if we stop and we look at it, 20 is exclusive, which means we'll go up to that point, but that's because we're starting at 0. So if we start at 0 and we iterate to 19, we have 20 values here. Now, if we decide to change that and add a 2 here, we'll run from 2 to 19. Any questions on that being exclusive, meaning that that actual 20 value is not included in your results? Any questions there? All right. Now, we're going to step into a little bit more complicated piece here. It gives us more functionality. And still within our for loop, we have our index and we have comma item. So what we're doing here is we are declaring 2 variables that we're going to use, and we're using this function enumerate. Now, if you look up here, we have our fruits list, which has 3 elements in it. And if we had a singular variable here, we would just iterate through our elements as we've seen before. But now when we call this enumerate function, we want to use 2 values here. The first one being our index. So we get our 0, 1, 2, and the next being our fruit, which is our actual elements here. And we can run this to be able to see a demonstration of that. See how we have our interpolated string here, where we have the literal text index, and then we want to we are outputting our index number, again, starting at 0, and we're going to print our fruit, which is the element in that location. So index 0, bananas, index 1, apples, and so on. Any questions there? So use cases is that's when we want to have both the actual index number and our item, depending on what we want to do with that. And it does happen from time to time. Now, for iterating through dictionaries, we're going to use the items method that we've seen before. We have our dictionary of phone numbers here. In this particular one, if we remember correctly, items returns the key value pairs. So our K here is short for key. Our V here is short for value. And if we remember right, the items method returns a list of tuples of key value pairs, and that's how we're picking these pieces up. Everybody see that? Any questions here? And this is some more descriptions of how we're going through these. Um, so here's a good little, now that we've gone through and seen these 4 different ways of utilizing a for loop, we could see this was our original base case. And you want to use these when we want to iterate through elements and we just need the value. So we're looking at like our our various elements of our list, trying to do some operations on that. We have the for I in range, or for index in range, and that's when we know we have a specific number of iterations that we want to do that's not really not really captured inside any of the variables that we're using. And then we have our for index and item in an enumerate in using the enumerate function. And we use that for when we want both the index number and the element of the iterable that we're trying to access. And then we have the for key value in dictionary.items method from when we're working with key value pairs inside a dictionary. Any questions? Okay. Now, the next type of loop we're going to cover is called the while loop. Now, with a for loop, we generally know we know how many times we're going to be going through things. It's usually like the length of our particular list, or like the range, or there's a specified amount that we already know ahead of time that we're trying to get to. When we don't know that information, that's where the while loop kind of helps us out. So the while loop, how it operates differently is where we start the block of code. Just like we're looking at building a Boolean expression here. So we have while our progress is less than the file size. File size is a integer we've assigned up here. Our progress is assigned to 0. And then we print our file size and we move into this. And this is going to run while it is true. As soon as it is false, we will we will finish our loop. One of the things that's key to note here is the pieces above here, the pieces before our loop here. This is how we're setting up our condition. With for loops, we didn't need to do that. That was all inside our initiating statement before the colon. But inside a while loop, we need to initiate it somehow. So we have our file size, and it's assigned to a value, and just like we were covering. So when we go through our iteration of the loop, we take our progress value and we increment it by 1. If anybody doesn't remember this, plus equals 1 is the same thing as progress equals progress plus 1. So that's what we mean by incrementing, is we're adding 1 to whatever our current value is. And then we check if our progress is equal to the rounded file size. We're rounding this division here by half to check and see if we're at half or 50%. And the same thing, we're going through and we're rounding whatever our file size times 0.75 to get our 75% rating. So if we run this, each time we're going through, this will print us a status as we hit those pieces. So we start at our 100,000, we get our file is 50% full and file is 75% full, and then eventually are done writing. Any questions there? Now there's a careful consideration here that if we're not careful, we can create an infinite loop here. An infinite loop will just keep going and going until we run out of memory. Now, I'm not sure what it'll do in Jupyter Notebooks. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy it right over here and give you a demonstration of that. Copy it into our practice PY, and I'm going to set this file size at -1. So what I've done is I've changed the logic to the file size is at -1, and we're looking for the progress being, while the progress is less than the file size, we're going to continue going through this loop. So as I run it, we skip both of these sections, but it actually ended up finishing out here. So if we start our progress, if we set our progress file size at 100 and start at 200, no. So the particular typo, if we went through, this is the better typo. So if we made a mistake and then instead of added 1, we subtracted 1 to our progress here, this is the demonstration I'm looking for, because what's happening right here is this cursor is just hanging. And that's one of our indicators that where something is stuck, especially with such short code. And the reason behind that is instead of adding 1 like the rest of the logic expected, we were subtracting 1. So the progress was going to the left, was getting smaller instead of bigger and getting close to the file size. Any questions there? And that's what this is pretty much covering right here. Now we have some flow control statements that we can use inside both for loops and while loops, called break and continue. So a break statement, as we're looking at here, will, as we go through our checks here, if we hit this else check, this break will terminate the loop. And if we run this, we have cookies equals 9, our students, and for each student in students, we're working on being able to distribute enough cookies for all the students. But if we run this, we end up running out of cookies before we get to Kevin and Greg. So the logic works here. If we don't have cookies to hand out, then we shouldn't complete the loop anymore. Any questions there?
Yes, I do have a question. Um, on the cookies, the minus in front of the equal sign, so it's just, is that just eliminating one cookie every time it gives out a name?
Yes. What we're
Okay,
doing here is the same thing as going cookies equals cookies minus one. So as we go through, if we have more than 0 cookies, we print out the person, which is our student in our list, gets a cookie and we decrement one cookie from the total. We
gotcha.
have 9 cookies, but I believe we have 11, yes, 11 elements inside our list. So 2 of them are going to get left out, but there's no reason to continue through the loop anymore. So we just print our statement that we print our statement. It addresses Kevin. We're out of cookies, and then we break out of the loop. So we never actually get to Greg. There's no sense in checking for Greg because we already know we don't have any cookies. Does that help?
Yeah, yeah, got it.
All right, thank you. Great question. Any other questions? Okay, so the next statement that we're going to cover is the continue statement. So in this particular case, we're going to run through this. We have our elements of our list. It's the same names. I believe it's 11 in here. And we have a second list with Nick, Tish, and Roger in there. And for student and students, we know we're going to go through each one of the students in the first list. And we're checking if our current student is in this list of completed survey students. We're going to continue. And what that does is instead of breaking out of the loop completely, we're going to just restart it with whatever we have inside without processing any more to this um, statement. So we skip all of our else statement right here. Even if there were things, even if we had added more logic, if we add more logic here, we will we will continue to skip this piece. Whenever we hit this continue, we go right back up to the 4. So even though it's outside of the else loop, and how we see that is we check Aaron as first. We check if Aaron is in this list. Aaron is not. So we print Aaron needs to complete the survey, and then we hit that more logic. But as we get down to Nick, Nick is in the list. So we have no print statements. We're not actually doing anything. And we jump right back up to get to the next student. And notice how not only did we not hit the else block, but we didn't hit the more logic block either. So we actually output nothing there. And then we went to our next student, Rod, and checked if Rod was in the completed survey. Any questions there? All right. For this next example, we're showing another continue example. We start with our all nums list, which is empty. And if we remember correctly, when we were going through, when we're using our for loop, we're going to iterate through everything from our start value to our end value exclusive. So what we're looking at here is we want to add a number into our all nums list from 1 to 10,000. So if we want to include the number 10,000, we put in our range 10,001, like you see here. And we're inputting these, we could see some typecasting here, if everybody remembers that, because what we're getting here with our range, what's being output from the range function is an integer. In this particular use case, we want to have a string in our list. So this is going to be a list of strings which happen to represent numbers. Any questions there? And then next, we create our process nums list, which is an empty list. And then we're going to iterate through all of the numbers that we had added in all nums. And we're checking if 9 is in our number list, if 9 is our number, or if 0 is in our number. And that is our current element of our all nums list. And if either one of those are true, we're going to continue, not process anything, and just move into the next element of our all nums list. If we skip this, if these both end up as false, we'll take our process num and append it into we will take our num and append it into our process num. Sorry, I reversed that a little bit there. And then in the end, we're going to output the length. If we remember, the length function tells us how many elements are inside our lists. And then we're going to output the first 10 items using slicing. So I'm going to go ahead and execute that, and we see here's our length, the length of all nums. When we started, we have 10,000 elements. That's what we expected, 1 through 10,001 for our range. And our length for our process numbers has 4,680. And we see, as we look at our results here, we see that the number 9 is missing from our result. And because we're looking for the character 0 in num, 0 is in 10, so we're skipping both 9 and 10 in here. Any questions with that? All right. Now we're going to move into loops within data structures. And just like we were talking about on day one when we were talking about strings, it's an immutable list of characters. So we can iterate through characters. If we remember that we were using indexing, so we could call text and put into the square brackets the number 0, and we could get the H. So how that helps us inside this particular example is we're going to iterate through each character. So we have 4 character in text, text is our string here, and we're going to print each character. And we can see how this takes and prints one character per line, including our punctuation. Any questions there? All right. I have about 6:39, 6:40. I'm going to let you guys we're going to go on a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 6:50, 6:55-ish, and we'll get pick up and everything. Okay. I'm going to pause the recording.
DJ, you're muted.
I apologize. Thank you very much, Francisco. Um, One of the other methods that we can utilize here in using strings that might make a little bit more sense is what we'll do is we'll put our text in here. Our text equals hello world. And then we want to know how many vowels we have in here. Does anybody have any idea how we might be able to implement this? Call this num vowels, and we'll call this vowels list. Anybody have any suggestions on what I should do next to be able to count how many vowels we have inside hello world?
Can't you do index?
Could you explain what you're talking about, what you mean there?
Um,
For
okay. I know there's one command or where you can do index along the lines of I want to say syntax, where you go and it tells you how many characters you have in each list.
um yes, there is a method where we can go about it that way. How would we implement this in a for loop?
Oh,
Mm,
you do. I'm sorry. Was somebody?
no, that was me. I'm sorry.
Uh, the the length. Um, it would be. Da, da, da. Could you do length and then do vowel list and it tell you and then it'll tell you how many characters you have. Uh, are you looking solely for vowel list or for all of the above?
Well, okay, so I'm going to explain my thinking here. I created this vowels list because these are our vowels, correct?
Hmm.
Okay, so we should be able to easily check using that vowels list if we have a vowel, right?
Got it. Yeah, I think
What I'm
length
what
I'm
I'm
sorry.
looking at, oh, I apologize. What we're looking for, how about I add this to a comment? This will work better. How many vowels are in this string? So this is my question is how would we figure out how many vowels we have inside this string? I see Kate is asking, is the question how many vowels are in the phrase, or are we asking what vowels are in the phrase? Well, what we're looking for is we want to know how many vowels we have in our phrase "Hello World." Does that help clarify it? Yes,
Oh,
it does set up the code differently. You're
Yeah,
correct.
that's why I was asking. I wanted clarification on just that piece.
Yeah, my comment shows up a little bit gray here. How about we have our string iteration right here. Anybody want to try to help me out with this? Or do you want me to run this and see what the length is going to give us?
I have an idea.
um,
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So because you're looking at how many vowels in the vowel list out of the text. So then wouldn't you would put like text in brackets within in line 5 because that's
Okay,
what you're
so
going to index, correct?
how about we'll jump down to line 6. And what are you talking about here? What do you want
So
me to type in
because
here?
you're going to reference the text, right, of hello
The
world, that's what
text
you're
variable.
looking,
Hmm.
right? So wouldn't it be like you're gonna you're gonna reference text in brackets up against the vowel list?
So how would I do that? Text in brackets? This is this what you're talking about right here?
Yeah, put that in like brackets, and then it's going to be like I don't know how to structure it. It was just that's what's going to be in the bracket space, right? And then within the total parentheses. So it'd be like length,
Okay, so how
parentheses,
about how about
vowel
we
list with the
how about we
text in the brackets and then close beside it and then close parentheses.
how about we start with this? If I run this,
I'm going to type it out.
yep, I need to print it here. If I print this, this is going, okay, so this gives us 5. What does that 5 refer to?
that's for
We
the
have
vowel
5.
list. 1,
Okay,
2,
so
3, 4, 5.
we have
So we
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So now we have the length of the vowels list.
so you want it for the hello world. So we
And
would just
we
switch it
want
to
to know how
text.
many vowels are inside the string.
Will we just switch the vowel list to uh never mind. Hold on.
Remember, we're covering for loops right now. So that's a key piece of, that's a very helpful tool that we can use to do this.
We will put four and then put the vowel list. So we will put four and then of all the vowels in text, I think.
For vowel,
Or four vowel list. Would that be it?
okay,
So
so I'm going to do a quick recap right here. Um, this text right here that we have is this string right here. Do you guys see that?
yes.
Okay, so this piece of the for loop where it says text, that is the that is the variable that we're trying to iterate through. Is that helpful?
So text is technically the key and the hello world as a value.
Well, the keys and values are for dictionaries, and right now we're not dealing with a dictionary, we're dealing with a string. So what we're looking at is we're looking at a list of characters. So each, the H, the E, the two L's, all of these are characters, including our white space in this string, which when we go through this loop over here,
Would
that
that
we
for statement be four vowels in text as a start?
you could do 4 vowels in text because you know what this is right here, right? Python does not know what a vowel is, right?
Oh, okay. So then, well, we could do
So then, wouldn't you turn that into the vowel list or somehow pick up the vowel list that you made up above?
I wrote the wrong word. I didn't write down vowel list.
Yeah, so our vowel list is one way we can tell the computer what a vowel is. Okay, so we've created that into a list. So we might not want to use vowel here if we're going through text, because what are we going through? What are we iterating through if we're going through the text variable up top here?
You're trying to go for the vowels. So I was incorrect. Would that be vowels list instead of vowel in the four? So four vowels list in text, or is that incorrect?
Okay, so vowels list is another list. Okay, so if we try to assign this to vowels list, remember when we were talking about we don't want to reuse the same name? And if we look over at our example here, we have for character in text. So if we're iterating through our text variable, are all of those a vowel?
So then would you switch it around? Would it be four? No, because you said you
Well,
can't use that. Would it be for
This isn't
character?
the this isn't the only line that we need. We need more lines. So that one line is not going to do it for us here. So that's good, a key piece of consideration. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead and say again
Oh
what you were
yeah,
saying.
I feel like I was incorrect regardless. Would it be because I'm looking at the example, the four character in text print character, it prints down all the characters in it. Um, would you do four character in vowels list to print out the or to get the vowels in that vowels list?
Okay, so you're looking for for character in vowels list?
Oh no, because if you do characters, it would it also do the
Well,
commas?
so so character is just a variable. It's just a placeholder for us. So this is just a placeholder. All it knows is what this turns into is whatever element. So when we go through this way, we're going to print our character to see what we get. Okay? Let me clear this out. And as I run it here, so now we have, if we print each character in the vowels list, we have each character here, right?
Yes.
Okay. So we've done pretty much something similar to what we have over here in the example. Now, how could we use this to figure out how many vowels we have in our phrase hello world?
Hmm.
stumped.
So if we're leaving our print statement here for our characters. Now, we could start with this is a conditional, right? This is some sort of condition that we would want to count our number of vowels, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So what kind of statement do we use there? Do you guys This would have been
I
from day two.
am not sure. Let me see.
Would it be no?
Try to speak out the step to yourself in plain English. Let's not think about code right here. Okay.
Um,
Four vowels in text.
No.
or length of vowels in text?
Okay, so the length gives us an integer that tells us the length of whatever we're giving it. Okay, so if we do len text and len vowels list, we run those. What that gives a, oh, I apologize. This is the reason why
No, I was
I
saying
need to length
length
of
of
vowels.
vowels in text. So length of vowel list in text.
Is that proper syntax?
No, but you said say it in plain English, not in code.
Oh, okay, okay. So your lengthened vowels in text, that doesn't make a lot of sense, right? When you say that in plain English.
I'm saying how many vowels are in the text.
So if we have one piece, one character from our vowels list, the question is this character a vowel? Well, we know all of our characters are vowels. So if I change this around, is this vowel in the text? So what I'm going to do is this right here is where we're going to start using an if statement. Does that start helping out?
Yeah,
Where we're
I
going to
see you said
go
that.
with an if statement, if char. Now we're looking for a membership operator. Do you guys remember the membership operator?
No.
That would be the in.
Mm, okay.
Now it's giving me a red squiggly because this statement is not complete. And we have our vowels list, we've got our num vowels, and we've got our text string here.
So, so you want to put text there, right?
So if we put it in text here, and then we open up, now what do we want to do?
Now is the point where you want to count it, or you want it to tell you how many it has.
Well,
Um,
we're going through each one, so this is why we're using a loop. So if this particular character, which is a vowel, so if I change this to a vowel to make a little more sense, and then if this vowel is in our text, then we want to count it. So how do we count it? Do you remember?
Would be continue.
Well, continue is how we next step to the next
Oh,
piece.
okay.
Okay, that's a flow control for the for loop or for the for and the while loop, but does it actually do anything? It just jumps to the next for. If we don't do something before that, then we're just running through the loop, right?
Can we count?
So what we have is if we do a count, we're using the count method isn't going to give us anything meaningful right now. But if we take our vowel and add it here, then we take, and if this vowel is in our text, we're going to add 1 to our num vowels.
mm,
Is that
okay.
helpful?
Yeah,
And if we print here,
because then it's just going to count how many it has. And
num
then, okay.
vowels, yeah, that's where that membership operator is. And we've got our vowel, so the first time we go through, that's A. Okay. So when we have A, we want to do something. We want to use that A to check something. And we're going to see if the A is anywhere in this list. If it is, then we add to our num vowels. We started at 0, and then we end out at whatever our count is. Here, let me clear this out. So when we run this, I'm going to comment that out. So when we run this, we end up with 2 vowels. And that looks like it works, right? Because we have, if we look at our, I'm trying to do this without getting a pop-up. If we look at our hello world, we have our E and our O for vowels, correct? Well, wait, we have 2 O's in here. So what should that num vowels have been?
3.
So it looks like we probably have to work on refining this a little bit, right? So the other direction we could go, what does anybody have any ideas on what the other direction we could go for checking for this membership?
Is that the
We
minus
get
one?
in the minus one?
You
Well,
said
if
to in the other direction. We did the plus one, right? So
okay, so I don't mean increment or decrement. I
okay.
apologize. Yeah. Another option of what we can check. So if we went through, we've gone through and we've checked to see if A was in here and it's not. We go to see if E is in this text. We find it right here, right? So we add 1 and we move on to our I. When we get to our I, that's not in here. So we move to the O and we find the O, but we find the O once. We don't go back through and check it again, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to add a continue.
Um, this looks like we might have to iterate through. So we might have to change this out because of the way that the membership operator works. It's going to stop at the first one, and we're not actually telling it to keep going. Okay. So if we go through and we have our vowel in our vowels list, and if we go through and we add another 4, care in text, now what can we do here with our conditional statement? We could probably start this with an if. Any ideas?
If vowel list,
Well,
or if
now
vowel,
You
if
be if
vowel,
O in text, would that be that one?
if
if
vowel.
if what was the other part?
I'm trying to think of it aloud. If vowel and tech, I'm thinking it's the
One of
same.
the so when we're using the vowel in text, the part that we saw that didn't work the way we expected it to is if it found it once,
We
then
use
it skipped over it. So maybe in isn't our best bet here. So what if we go, there's another operator that we can use, and if we check if the vowel is our character, and then we go num vowels plus equals 1. And remember, that's the same thing as what I wrote up here is num vowels. The reason why we're looking at using another loop is because of that problem that we just saw. We had 2 O's, so we need to tell it to check again, right?
mm-hmm.
Does that help? If anybody,
Yeah.
if I'm moving too fast, please ask questions.
I do have a question.
Go ahead.
Is there a way that technically you, because I see you have number vowels or non-vowels up top. So
Hmm.
is there a way that you could do something up here so it automatically adds it up there, and then you pull that, and then at the bottom you potentially just pull the number of vowels that are already counted up top?
Um, not by building it into a variable that way. That's actually what we're doing right here, because we have to check our vowel and our character, because we need to see if the character and the vowel are the same. Because as we ran through it, we've counted that there were two vowels in there, but our total amount of vowels was three because of the duplicated O's. And that's where we start seeing that we needed another for loop. Do you see
Okay.
that? Or
Yeah.
I mean, this is a little bit, this is stepping above what we've already looked at, I believe. And this is called a nested for loop. And I didn't expect it. I noticed the additional O in here when we were looking at it, and that the fact that we ended up with the two. So we're going to go through each one of our vowels, and we want to see how many times it shows up in the text. But the in operator, it tells us it's in there, but it doesn't tell us how many times. Now, somebody did mention a count operator, correct?
Yes. So how will that work?
So we might be able to go this route, and you could go num vowels equals num vowels plus text dot count vowel. And we'll try running that and see what that comes up with. So that right there looks like it would work better utilizing that count, correct?
Yep.
Now, if we go like this will still work. Remember when we were talking about multiple ways to solve the same problem?
hmm
Now, you could also flip it around. You could go through each character in the text and check for the vowels that way. And you could go do the nested loop that way, or, just reversing whether we're counting the vowel or we're counting the character inside this list. But yes, your text.count has to be part of that bigger logic. Do we see that? Otherwise, if we go print text.count, and if we tried to do something like vowels list, this, I believe, you see how it gives us an error down here? It gives us an error
Yeah, why is he returning as an error?
because it's right here. Argument one must be a string, not a list. So we can't give a list to count as an argument. We have to go through each one. Our our list is a list of strings or individual characters. So we can use that individually just like we used here. But if we tried to push the whole list in there, it doesn't work. But if I switch it and give it an index, now it works. Does that help with how count works?
Yes.
So I believe it does seem to get a little bit confusing. But it's how the count method is built. All it wants is one character. So if we put in there an exclamation point, we get our single exclamation point that's at the end here. Does that help out with the a different use case for going through and doing the for using your iterating through your strings a little bit, or is that just kind of convolute things a little bit more?
I understand what you're doing.
The count was a very good suggestion because my initial thoughts was going through and using this nested loop, but nested when you can avoid nested loops, you do your best to try to. Now, most likely, this count probably has a loop inside of it that's doing exactly this, where it's counting how many vowels or how many characters of whatever character we're giving it is in that list. So yeah, we could easily just go with if our vowel is, and we'll just say Z, then we'll go num vowels plus equals 1. This will give us a 0 result because we don't have a Z inside there. But see how that works, like how that works just like that count does. Where if we change it to our A, remember the list we're checking is the vowels list, this bottom one. Okay. And if we do the A, we get our 1. Do you see how that count function works the same way as this loop that we've built here?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. So by taking this back and running this, we have our 3 vowels, and we can just add however many. If we just add more vowels, it ends up continuing to count. So it looks like it's doing exactly what we were hoping for. All right. I hope that was helpful in seeing a little bit about how these work. Does anybody want that code I can paste that inside the,
Yes, please.
yes, I can
Yes,
paste
I'd
that right
appreciate that.
inside. Yep, not a problem. Do you want me to leave the commented stuff in here or do you want to play with that?
If you mind leaving the commented stuff so I can also play with
Sure.
it as well.
There you go. I'm going to copy that. And that, let me know if that should work right there. Let me know if you can't copy that out and take that to be able to use that.
Yep. Yeah, it works.
Okay. So as we go through, um, as we can see, we're going through. We use loops, lists a lot inside. We use loops a lot combined with lists, and that was what we were looking at when we were going through this list of our vowels, our vowel characters. So this particular example here takes and assigns the auto brands variable to various auto brands, Chevy, Tesla, Jeep, Rivian, Ford, Porsche, etc. And then for I, and remember, we use I is our index in range. And now we're going to take the length of the auto brands. So I'm going to comment all of this. You guys got all that code, right? I can delete this out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yes.
what I'm going to do is I'm going to break this down. I'm going to copy the auto brands right here, and then we're going to take this apart. So when we just take this length right here, and I just want to print that. So you can take with these functions that are calling multiple functions, you can usually take them apart like we've done right here to be able to see what each piece is doing. So what we do, let me clear this out here. So by just taking our auto brands list and then taking and just checking the length of our auto brands, we get 6 right here. So what this is doing, so we can look at this length auto brands and we know that's 6. So if I comment this and I go if for index in range, and we'll just put the 6 in there, we can just print our index and we'll see that we loop through that 6 times. Everybody see that? And remember,
Yes.
our output's down here. So
My
we
output is
know
gone.
your output is gone.
Right. Yeah. It's looking
From the
kind of
bottom,
scary over here.
from the bottom here. Okay, so
Yeah.
what you can do, I've been doing it pretty quickly. If you see your cursor, you could type out clear, CLEAR, and just hit enter, and it should just wipe that stuff out. It should bring you up to a clear screen. You should also be able to move your
That bottom
terminal
thing is
window up.
completely not there.
Okay, so if the terminal window is not there, did you try? Is it still not there if you click the
Like
run
somehow I
Python
think
file?
I went to delete it and it deleted the whole thing. So now I have nothing at the
The
bottom of the
panel itself
screen.
is probably hidden. Let me
You can
see
bring it up
here.
if you hit Control tilde.
There you go.
Do what?
Control tilde? Yes.
Yeah, it's the one above the tab.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna check that out.
Yeah, the character should look like this. If you can see it, it's pretty small.
Yep. It's that did nothing.
The control with it?
Yes.
Are you on a Mac or are you on a PC?
Um, I I have a Microsoft Surface.
Okay, so you're on the
Mhm.
Surface. I thought that there was a button that you could open.
Now it came back.
It came back. Okay.
All right, thanks.
Yep, not a problem. Oh, I keep. So if you have a lot of output there, you could type clear inside of that terminal window and it'll clear out your output. So we went through and we saw that we iterated through. This gives us 0 through 6. So when we're looking at this, our for I in range, it's the range 0 to 6, not including 6. What that does is that assigns our I variable to our index, which is 0 through 5. And just like we remember when we're dealing with our list, we have element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3, 4, and 5. So we could easily just add ourselves some comments here to be able to help break this out for us. Okay, so our I is equal to one of these numbers, and this is where we come into the next piece where we go into our conditional statement. And if we remember right, if auto brands I, that what that turns into for our first run is we'll print auto brands 0. To see what we're going to get through that first instance. So if it's auto brands 0 and we're checking to see if it equals Chevrolet, we're going to take auto brands and we're going to pop that same I. That I is our index number. So we're going to pop it off of this list, and then we're going to break. So if remember right, we break and we stop our execution of the whole list, or of the whole for loop, I apologize. So this would be when we'd want to use this range length, because we're going to pop takes in the index argument. So we can't actually, if we did a for loop where we went for I in, well, if we go for brand in auto brands, and then we try to go if brand is Chevrolet, and try to pop it here, auto brands dot pop brand. Can anybody tell me if this is going to work or not?
I think it will. It's just gonna take out you didn't take out pop. I think it'll list everyone. I mean all of them except Chevrolet.
You think so?
I think so.
Okay,
I
so we're
think so
gonna
too, yeah.
okay, so we're gonna go ahead and run that.
Oh,
And
okay.
remember when we tried to put a list into that count string function?
Yes.
Now we tried to put a string in a function that expected an integer. Do we remember what we're supposed to give pop for it to work?
Uh, I don't remember.
So what I'm demonstrating here is the reason why we needed to actually get the numbers. Because pop takes an integer and the index is an integer. Does that help?
Yes. Oh, okay. So you okay. I'm seeing the difference. All right.
Yeah, it's kind of subtle, but it comes into understanding what we're dealing with. Now, I remember, I think if we used an enumerate, we could have probably gotten the same answer. Let me go double check the enumerate. Yes. So if we go, I apologize for all the arrows all over. So just to execute this, this is what you were expecting the other one to read, correct? You were expecting it to read
Yeah,
it
that's it.
without Chevrolet.
Yeah.
But because pop needs an index, we can't just use the same for in loop we would have when we were going through to check our characters. But if we go through and we go index and we add that enumerate, we can change this to an index, because now, do you guys remember what we covered with the enumerate? What the enumerate does is it gives us our index. So there's two ways to do this one. We have using the range and length, or we can use the enumerate to be able to get the same result. Do you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
What we're doing in our for loop is we're creating two variables. The index comes from whatever number this is generating, which does the same thing as this range length. So this comes down to personal preference. I prefer this way because then I can still use the brand instead of, and to me, it kind of, especially when you're newer at this stuff, you can kind of directly see that this is our brand right here. The second variable is our brand, and it's telling us that it's a string. So we can directly compare that to Chevrolet. And if we want to use pop, we're we're getting the index here. However, another way we could do this, if you guys want to see that, what are we doing with this popped variable?
You're taking it out of that
We're
auto
we're
brands
just
list.
getting rid of it, right? So do we actually need to use pop here?
You can use remove, I guess.
Yes, you can. So if we go through and we get rid of this brand, we could change this out. Now we know we're going to recreate our error here, brand. But if we change out pop for remove and run it, we still get our answer. So that was effectively 3 different ways we could have taken that out if all we were worried about was just seeing the result. Now, if we wanted to use it, we definitely need pop, correct?
Yes.
But between when you're using the index, you'll see this a lot. You'll see both ways a lot. You'll see the enumerate. Ooh, there we go. You'll see the enumerate method, and the difference is you can see that there's 2 variables that we're creating. We did that up above. This uses the range length if all we want to deal with is the index. And just like when we were going over how to use, when we were going over how to index lists, we use that same concept. Instead of giving it a number, we have a variable here, and that's where we start using that I. Any questions there?
Nope.
Um, so we can, just like we were iterating through the list, we can iterate through tuples. It's effectively a lot of the same kind of concepts that we were going through. This is each coordinate is assigned to the variable coordinate when we're displaying that variable here. So coordinates is our collection. Our collection is a tuple. And we're not actually, we know that we can't modify a tuple. It's immutable. So pretty much we can just like iterate through it this way. I don't really, pretty much, yeah, you'll be going through and you'll be iterating through a lot of your collections. The dictionary is a more, does anybody want this code here for the enumerate?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll get this out of here. And you want, let's get this out. This right here. Just remember, this is another way to get your index numbers. All right, so I'm going to stretch this over here. And we have our person dictionary here, or key value pairs, name, Alice, age 25, etc. And we're going to go through each attribute in person. And when we're going through this, I'm going to run this. So this helps actually break down what's going on when we're using the for in loop with a dictionary. So our variable attribute, when we go through it, we can see that the attribute is the key of person. So the first thing we're doing with the attribute is we're calling the upper string method, and we can see the keys here. But to dereference to get the value, we're looking for, if we remember when we were dealing with dictionaries on Monday, we put the key inside the square brackets to be able to get our value. And the reason why we're typecasting to string is if you know that we have some integers in there, we don't want this to dot upper. If we remember from day one, dot upper is a string method, which capitalizes everything that we have, or capitalizes our characters, but you can't capitalize integers. If we try to call the upper method on an integer, we'll get an error here. We'll get a type error. So to be safe, we just take, as we're looping through this, we just take whatever the value is and convert it into a string. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
And as a good test, you can just take it right out and see. Let me clear that. That if you see, it prints the first line because the value is Alice, which is a string, so that works fine. But as soon as we go into age and we try to capitalize the integer 25, that's where we're running into this int object has no attribute upper. Does that help make sense why we're typecasting here? I know we covered typecasting on day one, but this is just kind of a good place where we end up actually using it to be able to safeguard our loops and stuff like that when we need to. Like if we're calling, in this instance, we're calling a string method and we don't want it to break if we run into something that's not a string. So just to be safe, we typecast a string. Any questions there? All right, going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break here. Okay, so as we saw when we were looping through the attribute in person, what we were getting was the key. And in order to use the key, just like we remember from day 4, to be able to get the value from a dictionary key, we supply it inside the square brackets. We also remember there was also a dot values method. And I'm going to go ahead and execute this block here. Now, if we remember, the dot values method or the dictionary values method would return a list of all of the values inside of the dictionary. So that's what we're getting here. If we go back up, actually what I'll do here is I'll just add a print statement so we can print person. So we'll print, I'm going to rerun this, and we can see where our keys and values are here. We can do this. This is kind of the print debugging that I had mentioned in previous lessons where we can kind of see what's going on. So first we're printing the dictionary out. We see our name, Alice, our key is name, value Alice, key age, value 25, etc. And then given the values method, returning a list of all the values, we just have the values here. Now there's another way that we can go. Oh, are there any questions about that before I move on? And we can see that right here. If I go print type person dot values. If I run that, we see that it's calling a class dictionary values, but it turns into a list. So if we go through and we just remove the type and we execute, we have a list that's contained inside this dictionary values type class. Everybody see that? Any questions there? All right, so another way we can go through and loop through a dictionary is with the items method. Now, the items method gave us both a key and a value. If we remember correctly, it was the keys and values were returned as were tuples inside a list for the items, for the dictionary items. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to print that. Come on. Going to print that. Go to print person dot items before we go into this loop. Our K represents our key, our V represents our value, and we can see how this is essentially the same functionality as the section that we're using up here, where we're just iterating through person, an attribute gave us the key. However, now instead of having to use the key to get the value, we already have the value. So if I run this, I'm going to move this down a little bit. Just like I was showing, or just like I was talking about, the items gives us the key value tuples, which is what we have right here. That's a tuple with the key on the left, or element 0, and the value on the right, or element 1. And the list, if we can see these brackets right here, we see that our tuples are contained in the list and separated by commas. So what's really going on is, just like we were going through the list, it's going through each one of these elements and pulling the key and the value out. The key we have represented by the K, which we're calling the upper string method. And just like we did before, we're typecasting the V, or the value, as a string so that we can call the upper method. Any questions there? This is a different way to do the same operation that we did right here. There's a bit more code in here because we see that we're using the attribute. The attribute is our key, so we need to use the key, give it to person so we can get whatever the value is, and then convert that to a string so we can turn it to uppercase. Any questions there? All right. We did kind of cover the nested loops a little bit. This one is going to go through. So if we remember when we were covering on day 3, the ordered data structures, and we had lists inside a list, that's what we have here, is a nested list. And to be able to go through every single element, we have to use a nested loop. So if I open this up we go ahead and run it, and we can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 are all printed. So what we're looking at here is this says 4-row in nested list. So if I want to, I can break this out for readability, and that might help translate what we're looking at when we're calling this a row. We could easily, at this point, we could actually call this item a column if you can look at that if you look at that like a spreadsheet or a table or something. That might be a good way to help clarify diving into nested lists like this. But when we have nested lists, it almost always means that we need to use nested for loops. Anybody have any questions about that? We could easily go in here and we could print row. Row. And if we run this again, we can see that we have our row right here. Does that help? Does that help clarify this a bit? I know this diving into nested lists and nested for loops does start getting a bit more complicated. So don't be afraid to ask questions here. All right. So now we can move into data manipulation. We've covered a lot of the basic foundational concepts with Python, and I understand that it definitely needs it needs hands-on practice to get your fingers in there and get the feel for things. We covered basic data types, data collections, functions, and loops, and now we're going to start trying to put some of these tools together to manipulate data. So this first section, we're looking at excuse me, data presentation. We have our set, which is a set of coordinate tuples. Okay, so we have the parentheses separated by a comma. We know that's a tuple. We have the curly brackets on the outside, and if I stretch this all the way over, we see the other curly bracket. When we know that's a set. I can go ahead and make them a little bit easier to see if we break each one of the tuples onto one of their own lines. Now, due to the white space rules, this is not going to impact how the program works, but it's nice to keep it all together like this so you can see what's going on. So we have our for loop, and we're going to go with our coordinate pair. And our coordinate pair from our set. So our set is the collection that we're going to iterate through, and our coordinate pair turns into whatever's separated by commas. So that's our first tuple. That's our first element of our set. We're going to print that coordinate pair, and then we're going to go into a nested loop and break that coordinate pair into two items. We're also adding in the round function. If we remember that from our numeric functions, we're taking our item. Our item is one of these two elements. So our first time through, our item is this 34.9. And we're going to round it to 2 decimal places. So we're going to try to round it down to, this should be 34.94. And then we're going to format the output with this rounded degree text and then add the actual item that we're looking at after. Now, this other piece of text, this other print statement down here is a way in Python you can print repeated characters. So what this is going to do is this line is going to take this dash and space and print it 15 times. So when we run this, I'm going to run this here, we have our coordinate, which is this top section here. Our coordinate printed with our coordinate pair. This lines up to here. We have our two rounded degrees. So we've rounded the 36.9569 to the two decimal places. So we get 36.96. And same thing with the negative 79 or negative 77.951 to negative 77.95. And then we get that dashed line here, which is printed right here as a nice little separator. And then we just continue iterating the same logic for every single one of our coordinate pairs. Any questions with that? There is a lot going on here.
I do have a question. How was it that I see on a rounded degree, how was it that you were able to pretty much have the first degree and second degree on different lines?
On the different lines, okay, so that comes from the print statement. When we use the print statement, we have three print statements here, but you see this twice because there are two items in this coordinate pair. So it goes through this sub loop twice and it prints this rounded degree twice. One of the built-in one of the built-in functionalities in the print function is it will just print on one line unless you specifically tell it not to. Okay?
I got you now.
So
I got you.
it adds that new line that we talked about on when we were talking about white space characters and stuff.
Gotcha. So let me know if I'm understanding this wrong. So pretty much, because since it starts from top to bottom, it looks into the set, and then once it looks into the set, it prints the coordinates. And then now you're telling to look at the items, and since it has two items, it's looking at both of the items in each, what's the term? Tuple?
Tuple, yeah, because the
Tuple.
coordinate pair is the tuple. Yes, yeah,
Okay, I got you.
and that's how you can see one of the things we're doing here is we're taking. I'm going to underline this, and you see how we're taking that item from that we're currently looking at in the set, and we're printing it, and then we're reusing that item because we know that's a collection as well, or reusing that element there, which where our actual item variable that we're using here is where we break apart the tuple to use those two pieces.
I got you.
A lot of times, that's one of the things that you'll notice if you're not referencing the variable you're using in the outside loop, sometimes you can stop and think, do I actually need a less nested loop here? They kind of connect together that way. Does that help too?
Yeah, yeah, it does. Thank you.
Yep, not a problem. Any other questions? That's a great question, by the way.
Well, I have a I have a question.
Okay.
And so I was looking at the print and the string times 15.
Mm-hmm.
And I was looking at like, I was thinking, like, I know it printed 15 lines, but how did it know to just do 15 line versus 15 of everything, like 15 each line 15 times? Because I would think like the other print commands would have been sufficient enough to bring what's up here right now.
Yeah, for this, when you want to repeat characters, it only applies to the things inside of your arguments. So let me get that right there. So
Mhm.
you remember when we were talking about the concept of scope and everything?
Somewhat, yes.
So the scope is it's it's this particular function's lane. That 15 only belongs inside this print statement. None of the rest of this print statements know anything about that. So that's
Okay.
where it's kind of that's where the scope is they don't need the other print statements don't know it exists. If I went through, I do not know, but we will try. We'll see if that works or if it causes an error. No, that's not what I wanted because that took item and it multiplied it by 2, and that caused an error. So I believe this is how, okay, in order to do that, I would have to go print times 2. There we go. And there we go. Now, do you see where the doubling is happening here?
Right, yes.
So I had to get the syntax correct there, so I apologize. Um, but now it's doubled the rounded degree message, but it didn't double the item message.
Okay.
It's 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 happens to do with the way Python's print function works.
Mhm.
Usually, this right here, it doesn't look like a very good use of it, but for building this little separator here, it is kind of handy if you have a whole bunch of data and you want nice, clean separators.
So what if you used a different number other than 15?
Oh, I could go like 25,
Okay.
and now you see how the line got bigger right here.
Oh my goodness. I was like, I really was overlooking it. It's just with the lines. I was
That's it. Yep, that's
oh
it.
I was counting. I counted like each actual row. Like
Oh, you were thinking that it was talking about the rows. I understand. Okay.
yes, yes.
No,
Okay.
this is dealing with just the characters. It might make a
Okay.
little more sense if I add another dash there, and you see how that just filled off all the dashes. So what it
Okay. That's
is
what does okay.
yeah,
No,
it's just the characters here.
okay, I understand. Oh, thank you.
Yeah, not a problem. That's a good question. Any other questions? Okay, we do have our exercises, and this looks like we have a list of coordinates here. Well, it's quite a big list. I would definitely take these and I would put them in that practice PY file because then you can start formatting them. Oh, come on. You may have to use your keys to copy this. I'm not sure. But I would copy these in here because then you can go through and you can actually start breaking out the lines to be able to help make them so that you can see everything. It is handy so that you have an idea of what's going on. It's not necessary, but it's one of the things I like to do. Ooh, And it looks like we have a space in here. Just make sure if you're putting them on another line, make sure that you do it after the comma whenever you're trying to reformat your display how your stuff is laid out. I mean, you could easily just stretch it over if you wanted to, but that's the handy thing about using the practice PY file. In this particular exercise, let's see what the problem statement is. You're given the list of coordinates, which you may have to find formatting anomalies. So like when I was going through and placing these on different rows, we can already start seeing things aren't lining up. So what this exercise is letting you know is you may have to do some stuff with that. Now, we are dealing with strings, so you can use string functions to be able to kind of help clean that stuff up. If you guys remember the string method that removes white space from in front of and behind a string, that might be really handy here. And then it says to format them with a decimal point, which that tells me that we've got to change whatever we have here to probably a different kind of variable if we're going to add a decimal point. In the listing, it says that latitude coordinates have an N or an S at the end for north or south, and they have 2 digits with 4 decimal degrees, and longitude has 3 digits with 4 decimal degrees. So this is kind of telling us how our formatting should look. Okay, so after we look at this, I was incorrect. So turning it into a float is not what we want. We just want to be able to take the string and insert the decimal point in the right place. But we know that strings are immutable, so we probably have to use some loops with this kind of stuff. We know that we have our north and south and our east and west, and there is a difference because our north-south have 2 digits with 4 decimal places, and our longitude has 3 digits with 4 decimal places. So it sounds like we'll probably have to count through some characters there. And then what we'll want you to do is put those in a new list and output them properly formatted. Any questions with that? I know there's a lot there. This one's definitely one to kind of poke at, fill yourself around. If you guys want to take some time and try to take a shot at it, go ahead. I can stay in the room. The lesson is done right now, so we could go over that. I can end the recording, and if anybody wants to stay in and work on it, I'll be right in here for questions.
DJ,
Yeah,
I'm
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead and say what you're saying. I have something else.
Oh, I was just about to say that if you don't feel like staying here and working on these, if you don't have any more questions, I'll see you tomorrow, and I hope you guys have a good night.
Thank you. Good night.